I never really expected my life to take a nosedive like this. My name is Jake, and I'm a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur. I thought I was living the dream. A beautiful wife, Emily, who I had been with for almost a decade, and a promising startup that just landed seed funding. Things were looking up, but somewhere between the excitement of new money and the late nights at the office, everything started to crumble. Emily and I had always had a good relationship, or so I thought. She was smart, ambitious, and always supportive. At least that's how it appeared on the surface. I'd gotten to know her during college. We clicked immediately. We shared dreams of success, and we had been through thick and thin together. But lately, something felt off. Maybe it was the long hours I was putting into my startup or the fact that I had been more focused on my work than on us. I noticed Emily seemed distant. Little changes in her behavior began to raise alarms in my mind. She was spending more time on her phone, suddenly had girls' nights with friends I had never heard of, and when I tried to initiate intimacy, she brushed me off with excuses. One night, I got home later than usual after a meeting with my mentor, Mike, who was guiding us through this crucial phase. I walked into our apartment and found Emily laughing on the couch, her phone in hand, a little too animated for someone who was just watching TV. When I asked her about her day, her response was vague, and I caught a glimpse of a text notification from a number I didn't recognize. I asked who it was, and she said it was just a colleague. My gut twisted. Days passed, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I took to stalking her social media, something I had never done before. I noticed she was liking posts from a certain account, and curiosity got the better of me. After some digging, I discovered that account belonged to Mike, the same Mike who was mentoring me through the startup process. My heart sank. It was the first time I thought about infidelity. One day, as I was leaving for an evening meeting, I saw her getting into Mike's car, laughing and kissing him on the cheek. I froze, my heart raced, and anger surged through me. The trust I had in Emily shattered in that instant. I couldn't believe I was witnessing my wife with my mentor, someone I looked up to and admired. My mind was reeling, and I couldn't process what I was feeling. Betrayal was an understatement. When I confronted her that night, I forced myself to remain calm, though rage bubbled under the surface. "Emily, I saw you with Mike," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She laughed, a sharp, surprised sound like I had just told a terrible joke. "You must be mistaken," she said, rolling her eyes, but I pressed on, showing her the timestamp on my phone from the photos I had taken. Her expression morphed from shock to something I couldn't quite decipher. Suddenly, she turned defensive. "You don't understand, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her tone defensive. She spun a web of excuses, claiming it was just a professional relationship, a mentorship that I was misunderstanding. The more she talked, the more I felt my heart breaking, and I nearly lost it. "You've been distant, Emily. You think I haven't noticed? You think I'm stupid," I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. She exploded back, accusing me of not being present in our marriage. It was infuriating how she flipped the narrative. I had given my all to our relationship, and here she was, justifying her betrayal as a response to my work. I spent the night pacing the floor, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. The emotional impact hit me like a truck. I felt shocked, betrayed, and utterly alone. I never imagined I'd be in this position, standing at the edge of a chasm, looking down at the wreckage of my marriage. It felt surreal. I began to realize that Emily and I had been living in two different realities. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this define me or my startup. I would channel this pain into something powerful. I would innovate without their compromised guidance. Disruption required ethical foundations, and I would rise from the ashes. But first, I needed to confront the truth of what had happened with Emily and decide how to move forward. Would I fight for my marriage or let it go? I hadn't made up my mind yet, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't be a victim in my own life story. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. I was trapped in a limbo, oscillating between anger and heartache. My mind constantly replayed the moments with Emily, coupled with visions of her with Mike. I didn't know how to process it all. I threw myself into my work, focusing on my startup, hoping it would distract me from the chaos in my personal life. But every time a new idea sparked, I couldn't help but think about the betrayal. The irony of my situation gnawed at me. Here I was, trying to innovate and build something great, while my wife was tearing apart the foundation of our relationship. One afternoon, feeling particularly restless, I decided to confront Emily again. I still needed to hear her side more clearly. I wanted to know if she would come clean about anything beyond her flimsy excuses. I asked her to meet me at a nearby cafe, somewhere neutral. I could hardly contain my emotions as I waited for her to arrive. When she walked in, looking as composed as ever, I felt a mix of admiration and disgust. She wore a cute sundress, her hair falling effortlessly around her shoulders. She looked like the woman I fell in love with, but the thought of her infidelity soured that image. As she sat down, I didn't waste any time. "I saw you with Mike, Emily," I said bluntly, staring into her eyes. I needed her to understand the gravity of the situation, to see how deeply she had hurt me. "Do you have anything to say about it?" Her initial reaction was one of disbelief, as if I were accusing her of something trivial. "Jake, I told you it's nothing like you think. He's just been helping me with some projects," she replied, her voice strained but steady. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic? I watched you kiss him, Emily. I don't know what else you expect me to think," I shot back. The anger coursed through me. "You may think I'm blind, but I'm not. I know what I saw." She sighed heavily, her defenses crumbling slightly. "Okay, yes, we've been seeing each other. But it's not what you think. It's complicated," she admitted, her tone shifting from defensive to almost pleading. "Mike understands me in ways you don't anymore. You've been so wrapped up in your startup that I felt alone." "Alone? You think cheating is the answer?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You went to my mentor for emotional support. You didn't think to come talk to me instead." Her eyes glistened, a mixture of vulnerability and defiance. "I wanted to, but every time I tried, you were too busy with work. I felt neglected, Jake. I didn't plan for this to happen." The blame game continued, and the conversation spiraled into a chaotic exchange of words. We covered everything: her feelings of isolation, my commitment to my startup, and our relentless miscommunication. But amidst the whirlwind of accusations and defenses, something else started to emerge. I realized how deep the cracks had formed in our relationship, and it became evident that this wasn't a simple case of infidelity. It was a symptom of deeper issues we both had ignored. I felt the tide of sadness wash over me again. The woman I loved was sitting across from me, yet I felt like I was talking to a stranger. I had invested so much time and energy into our relationship, and here we were tearing each other apart. It was devastating and liberating at the same time. I had finally confronted her, and she was being honest, at least in part. I took a deep breath, trying to find my center amid the chaos. "Emily, if you're being honest with me, we need to figure this out. I don't want to fight anymore, and I don't want this to be the end of us. But if you're still seeing Mike, I can't move forward." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't want it to end either, Jake. I messed up, I know that. But if you're willing to work on this, I'll end things with Mike. I'll do whatever it takes to fix our marriage." I was taken aback by her admission. Part of me wanted to believe her, but the other part was still raw from betrayal. The emotional impact of her affair couldn't be erased overnight. I needed time to digest everything she had said and figure out if I could ever trust her again. Leaving the cafe, I felt lightheaded. I was standing at a crossroads. I could either try to rebuild our relationship or walk away from the mess she had created. I weighed my options, torn between love and self-preservation. I had to decide what was best for me, not just what I wanted. In the days that followed, I didn't jump into a decision right away. I took time to reflect on what I wanted. I had always believed in second chances, but this was a whole different ballgame. The thought of working through the pain and betrayal felt daunting. But if I chose to leave, it would mean letting go of everything I had built with Emily. I needed clarity. I spent my evenings drafting plans for my startup while grappling with what Emily and I had become. Would we emerge from this stronger, or would the cracks deepen into an unfixable chasm? I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about marriage and love. But deep down, I still hoped for the best, even as doubts lingered in the back of my mind. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a strange state of limbo. Emily had promised to cut ties with Mike, and she did her best to show me that she was serious about repairing our marriage. She started texting me more frequently, planning little dates and trying to rekindle the intimacy we had lost. But I was still haunted by the betrayal. Each time she reached for my hand or kissed me, I felt a pang of disbelief. Could I really trust her again? I spent hours staring at the wall, contemplating the future of our relationship. On one hand, I still loved Emily. She was my partner, my confidant. We had built a life together, and I didn't want to throw that away lightly. On the other hand, the memories of her laughter with Mike twisted my gut. I couldn't help but think about how easily she had turned to him when things got tough. The emotional damage ran deep, and I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive her. One evening, I decided to confront her again. I needed to know where her head was at. I wasn't looking for a fight. I just wanted transparency. We sat down in the living room, the awkwardness heavy in the air. "Emily, I need to ask you something," I began, my voice steady, filled with uncertainty. "Do you really want this marriage to work, or is it just guilt that's making you try?" She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "Jake, I know I messed up, but I do want this. I love you and I want to put in the effort to fix things," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm not just trying to placate you. I want to be with you." I stared into her eyes, searching for any sign of insincerity. "I need you to be honest with me. How do you feel about Mike now? Is there any part of you that still wants him?" I pressed, desperate for clarity. "No, I swear, I only realized how much I took you for granted when I was with him," she said vehemently. "It was a stupid mistake and I regret it every day. I was confused and lonely and I turned to the wrong person." Her words struck a chord, but I remained guarded. "Then why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you talk to me about how you were feeling?" "I didn't know how," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I felt embarrassed, like I was being silly for wanting more attention from you when you were doing something so important. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I shouldn't have gone to Mike. I realize that now." I took a deep breath, trying to process everything she was saying. I wanted to believe her, but there was still a wall between us, one that I wasn't sure I could tear down. "I don't want to keep having these conversations without any real change, Emily. If we're going to make this work, I need to see that you're committed to rebuilding our relationship." "I understand," she said, determination creeping into her voice. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy if I need to. I'll cut off all contact with Mike and I'll work on being more open with you. Just please don't give up on us." I nodded, still skeptical but willing to give her a chance. "Okay," I said slowly, "let's take this one step at a time. But you need to understand that trust doesn't come back overnight. It's going to take time and we'll have to work for it." We embarked on a journey of rebuilding, though it was anything but smooth. Emily started attending therapy sessions to explore her feelings and our relationship dynamics, and I occasionally joined her. I watched her pour her heart out, and while I appreciated her efforts, the process was emotionally exhausting for both of us. We spend hours discussing feelings, miscommunications, and the things we had taken for granted. I often felt like I was digging into a well of hurt that had only just begun to surface. During one of our sessions, Emily broke down, revealing that she had never truly understood the importance of communication in a relationship. "I thought love was enough," she cried, "but I realize now that it takes more than just feelings. I was so wrapped up in my own feelings of neglect that I didn't see how my actions were hurting you." Hearing her acknowledgement was a small relief. It felt like progress, yet the shadow of betrayal lingered. I still had moments where I caught myself doubting her. I would glance at her phone, wondering if she was texting Mike, or I'd feel a rush of jealousy when she received a message from a male colleague. Each time, I'd have to consciously remind myself to breathe and let go of those insecurities. The emotional roller coaster took its toll on me. I was trying to stay strong, but the sting of betrayal was persistent. On top of it all, my startup faced its own challenges as we moved forward with our plans. I had to navigate the pressures of entrepreneurship while simultaneously managing the emotional chaos at home. I would come home exhausted, only to find myself facing more emotional baggage. I knew I had to find a way to balance both aspects of my life. I started prioritizing self-care, hitting the gym regularly, and making time for friends. I began to share more about my startup journey with Emily, hoping it would bridge the gap between our two worlds. I wanted her to feel more connected, to understand my passion and the work that went into building something significant. However, as Emily began to open up, I realized something unsettling. The more she tried to connect with me, the more I saw just how much she had changed. While it was good to see her putting in the effort, it also made me question if I was falling for a version of her that was merely a reaction to the mess we were in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching a performance, wondering if the real Emily was lost in the chaos. As the weeks dragged on, I faced a difficult truth. I had to confront my feelings, not just about Emily's betrayal, but about whether I could see a future with her again. Was I truly willing to forgive and rebuild, or was I just clinging to the past? I knew I was approaching a pivotal moment. I had to either commit to healing or begin to think about moving on. The path ahead was uncertain, and I felt the weight of those decisions pressing heavily on my shoulders. As the emotional turmoil continued, I found myself waking up each day with a knot in my stomach. The weight of my decisions felt heavier than ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, contemplating whether to jump or find a way back to solid ground. My conversations with Emily were becoming a mix of hope and doubt, and I realized that I had to face my feelings head-on if I wanted to navigate this storm effectively. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The crisp air helped, but my mind was still clouded with thoughts of Emily and the emotional mess we were in. It was during this walk that I came across a park, a place I used to visit with Emily when things were good. I sat on a bench, reminiscing about the laughter we shared and the dreams we talked about. It felt bittersweet, a reminder of what we had lost. At that moment, I decided I needed to talk to someone outside of our situation, a friend who could provide a different perspective. I reached out to my old college roommate, Ben, who had always been a grounding force in my life. We met at our favorite bar, and as we settled in with drinks, I poured out my heart to him. "I don't know what to do, man," I confessed, stirring the ice in my glass. "Emily cheated on me with my mentor, and now I'm stuck trying to figure out if I can ever trust her again. I see her trying to change, but part of me feels like I'm losing myself in this process." Ben leaned back, taking a moment to process my words. "Look, Jake, relationships are rarely black and white. People mess up, but that doesn't mean they can't redeem themselves. The real question is whether you see a future with her. If you do, then you've got to figure out if you can move past this," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, absorbing his advice. But what if I can't? What if I'm just fooling myself into thinking things will go back to how they were? "That's a risk you'll need to weigh," Ben replied. "You can't move forward with someone if you're constantly looking back at the past. You have to decide whether you believe she's genuinely remorseful and willing to work on herself." His words struck home, and I realized that I had been fixated on the betrayal, unable to envision a future where forgiveness and healing could coexist. When I returned home that night, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. I had to focus on what I wanted, not just what had happened. It was time for a heart-to-heart with Emily, one that went beyond the surface-level discussions we had been having. The next evening, I sat down with her after dinner, taking a deep breath. "Emily, can we talk about where we stand? I want us to be honest about our feelings and what we want moving forward," I began, hoping to create a safe space for us to communicate. "Of course, Jake," she said, looking nervous yet willing. "I want to hear what's on your mind. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. I appreciate the effort you're putting in, but I need to know if you're truly committed to rebuilding our relationship," I stated, looking her in the eye. "Because honestly, I'm struggling to see a future where we're both happy, and I don't want to keep going through the motions if we're not on the same page." She took a moment before responding, her expression serious. "I know I've made mistakes, and I'm committed to making this work, Jake. I love you, and I don't want to lose you again. But I understand if you need time to heal." I nodded, realizing the truth of her words. "It's not just about time, it's about trust. I need to know that you'll prioritize our relationship and communicate with me openly. I want us to feel like a team again." "I will, I promise," she said, a hint of desperation in her voice. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to you. I've realized the importance of making you feel valued and heard." We spent the next few hours openly discussing our feelings, fears, and hopes for the future. It was the most honest conversation we had had in months, and I felt a flicker of hope beginning to grow. While I still had doubts, I could see that Emily was genuinely trying to understand my perspective. In the days that followed, I focused on rebuilding trust, and Emily kept her promises. She became more engaged in our conversations, expressing her feelings and asking about my day. We planned date nights and spent time together, rekindling the connection we had lost. But as we navigated this fragile territory, I noticed something unsettling. My feelings toward her were evolving. While I was beginning to appreciate the efforts Emily was making, I also realized that I was no longer the same person I had been before the affair. The betrayal had changed me. I was more guarded, cautious about opening up. I began to see Emily not just as my partner, but as someone I had to tread carefully around. One evening, we went out for dinner, a small celebration for a successful week at work. As we sat across from each other, I took in the sight of her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. I felt a pang of nostalgia. It reminded me of the way things used to be. Yet, within that nostalgia, there was also a sense of loss. The innocence of our relationship had been shattered, and while I wanted to move forward, I couldn't ignore the lingering hurt. That night, as we walked back home, the emotional weight of our situation pressed down on me. I paused and turned to Emily, feeling the need to voice my thoughts. "Can we talk about how you feel about us now? I mean, how you're processing everything." Emily looked at me, her expression thoughtful. "I'm scared, Jake. I want to move forward, but I'm also afraid of how much I've hurt you. I know I can't erase the past, but I want to prove to you that I can be better. I don't want to lose you." Her vulnerability tugged at my heartstrings, but it also sparked a realization. I couldn't just ignore the emotional scars left by the affair. If we were going to rebuild our relationship, we needed to address the pain and work through it together. "Emily," I said gently, "I need you to understand that while I want to move forward, healing will take time. There will be moments where I'll feel insecure or doubtful, and I need you to be patient with me. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." "I promise I'll be patient, Jake," she said earnestly, placing her hand on mine. "I'll do everything I can to help us heal." As we reached our apartment, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. It was a delicate balance between love and hurt, and while I wanted to believe in our future, I knew we were facing an uphill battle. But I was willing to try, willing to fight for what we had built together. Trusting Emily again would be a challenge, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was a challenge worth taking. The weeks continued to unfold in a whirlwind of emotions and uncertainty. After our heart-to-heart conversations, I felt a strange mix of hope and apprehension. Emily had made significant strides in her efforts to reconnect with me, but I was still grappling with the shadows of betrayal that loomed over us. Every small act of kindness she showed was a reminder of her past indiscretion, and I was learning to navigate the emotional landscape with cautious optimism. During this time, I focused on my startup, pouring my energy into it as a means of escape and as a way to reclaim my independence. The project was gaining traction, and I could feel the excitement bubbling within me. New opportunities were emerging, and I was determined to make it successful. I found comfort in the late-night brainstorming sessions, working on my pitch for potential investors and collaborating with my team. But just as the momentum in my professional life began to build, it seemed that personal challenges were also on the rise. One evening, as I returned home from a meeting, I found Emily sitting on the couch looking unusually tense. Her fingers tapped nervously on her phone, and when I walked in, she quickly put it down. "Hey, is everything okay?" I asked, sensing the change in atmosphere. She hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yeah, it's just, I had a conversation with Mike today," she said, her voice trembling slightly. My heart sank. The very name I had worked so hard to bury in my mind had resurfaced, and I felt a wave of anger rising within me. "What do you mean you talked to Mike? I thought you cut him out of your life." "I did, I swear I did. but he called me about some work-related issues and I thought it would be unprofessional to ignore his call. It was brief. She rushed to explain, her eyes wide as she searched for reassurance. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. Emily, I don't care about work-related issues. You know how I feel about you communicating with him at all. It's too soon. We're still trying to rebuild trust, and this is not helping. I know, she exclaimed, her voice rising with frustration. But it was just one call. I didn't want to be rude. I promise I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just trying to be professional. Professional, you have to understand how this looks from my perspective. I shot back, my voice strained. You were with him, emotionally and physically. It's hard enough trying to rebuild without you engaging with him again. Emily's expression shifted from defensive to apologetic. You're right, and I should have thought about how it would affect you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Just please don't shut me out. I paused, taking a deep breath to regain my composure. I'm not shutting you out, but I need to know that you understand the implications of what you're saying. I can't keep feeling like I'm walking on eggshells. We need transparency if we really want to move forward. I promise I'll do better, she replied earnestly, and for a moment I saw a glimmer of sincerity in her eyes. Still, the incident stirred up a whirlwind of insecurity within me. I knew I couldn't allow myself to be consumed by jealousy, but it was easier said than done. The following days were tense as I struggled to regain my footing. I threw myself into work even more, but the emotional turmoil was eating away at me. I caught myself replaying old memories, questioning everything I thought I knew about our relationship. I felt torn between wanting to forgive Emily and the ever-present fear of being hurt again. One evening, while working late at the office, I received a text from Emily. "Can we talk tonight? I have something to share," it read. My heart raced and I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach. As I drove home, I braced myself for whatever news awaited me. When I arrived, Emily was sitting on the couch, her expression serious. "Jake, I've been thinking a lot about our relationship and what happened," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I realized I need to take responsibility for my actions, not just say I'm sorry but really understand how they affected you." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "What do you mean?" "I think I need to take a step back from everything, my job, the stress, all of it. I want to focus on us, on rebuilding our trust, and I can't do that if I'm still juggling all these external pressures," she explained, her eyes earnest. "What do you mean by step back? Are you talking about leaving your job?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes, I'm serious," she replied, determination in her voice. "I've been thinking about it for a while, but today really made me realize just how important our relationship is. I don't want anything to come between us ever again." The gravity of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Here was Emily, the same person who had jeopardized everything we built, now willing to sacrifice her career for our marriage. It was an unexpected turn of events, and while a part of me wanted to embrace her decision, I also felt a pang of fear. What if this was too drastic? What if it only added more pressure to our already fragile situation? "Wow, that's a big step," I said, trying to process it all. "Are you sure that's what you really want?" "It's a huge decision." "I'm sure. I've thought about it a lot and I know it's what I need to do. I want to be fully present for our marriage and support you. I need to show you that I'm committed to this," she insisted, searching for reassurance in my eyes. I felt overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, gratitude, fear, and uncertainty. "Okay, if that's what you believe will help us, then I support you. But we need to keep communicating throughout this process. You can't just make these decisions without talking to me." "I understand and I will," she promised, her voice steady. As we sat together on the couch, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps this was the turning point we needed. If Emily was willing to take such a drastic step, maybe it would lead us to a place of healing and understanding. But I remained cautious, aware that healing takes time and patience. In the weeks that followed, Emily resigned from her position and dedicated herself to our relationship. We focused on rebuilding our communication, going to therapy together, and exploring new ways to connect. It was challenging, but I began to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with. There were moments of laughter, vulnerability, and shared dreams. elements of our relationship we had almost lost. Yet even amid this progress, I couldn't ignore the lingering shadows of doubt. I still worried about how fragile our connection was. Would we be able to sustain this momentum, or would the past come crashing back like a storm? I remained uncertain, but I knew I had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. It was a journey of discovery, both of ourselves and each other, but I was determined to fight for what we had built together. Trust was slowly being rebuilt, but I still had to navigate the complexities of my emotions. Would this new chapter lead to healing or a deeper fracture? Only time would tell, but for now, I chose to embrace the journey and the hope it brought. As winter set in, the air grew cold, but the atmosphere in our home began to warm. Emily's decision to step back from her career had been a bold move, and I couldn't deny that it had brought a renewed focus to our relationship. Found myself at a crossroads. While I was cautiously optimistic, uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Would this newfound commitment lead us to a deeper connection, or was it simply a band-aid on a much larger wound? In the weeks that followed, we delved deeper into therapy. Our sessions became a safe haven for us to voice our fears and vulnerabilities. I learned how to communicate my feelings without letting anger take the reins, and Emily was working on her own issues of self-worth and communication. We talked openly about the affair, exploring its roots and the emotional distance that had allowed it to happen in the first place. One day during a session, our therapist asked us to reflect on what we truly wanted from each other moving forward. I felt my heart racing as I contemplated the question. "I want to feel secure," I admitted, looking straight into Emily's eyes. "I want to know that I can trust you and that we're not just going through the motions." Emily nodded, her expression serious. "I understand. I want to prove to you that I'm committed to us, and I want you to feel valued. I've learned so much about myself through this process, and I want to share my journey with you." As the days turned into weeks, I began to witness the small changes in Emily that I had longed for. She started volunteering at a local community center, finding fulfillment in helping others, which seemed to bring her joy and purpose. She spoke about her experiences with enthusiasm, and it was heartwarming to see her rediscover her passions, no longer tied solely to her previous job or to the toxic patterns we had both fallen into. I, too, found myself diving deeper into my startup. The momentum was building, and with Emily's support, I felt a renewed sense of confidence. I began pitching to investors, working late nights with my team, and gaining traction in the tech community. It felt like I was reclaiming parts of myself that had been overshadowed by the turmoil of our marriage. As we moved forward, I also realized that part of healing meant letting go of past grudges. I needed to forgive Emily, not just for her sake but for my own peace of mind. I couldn't carry that burden forever. During one of our quiet evenings together, I took a deep breath and decided to address it head-on. "Emily," I said carefully, "I want to talk about forgiveness. I know it's been a long journey and I've been struggling with trust, but I want to try to move past what happened." Her eyes softened and she reached for my hand. "Jake, I can't express how much that means to me. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and I'm committed to making things right. I never want to hurt you like that again." We spent that evening discussing forgiveness and what it truly meant for us. I realized that forgiving her didn't mean dismissing her actions. It meant acknowledging the pain and choosing to rebuild despite it. It was a powerful moment, a stepping stone toward healing. As the weeks turned into months, the emotional barriers between us began to dissolve. We learned to communicate more openly and honestly, and I felt more connected to Emily than I had in a long time. We started cooking together, going on hikes, and rediscovering the joy of simply being in each other's company. I could see changes in her demeanor, the confidence and vitality that had once drawn me to her were returning. But with every triumph, I also faced moments of vulnerability. I still had fears and insecurities that occasionally surfaced. Just when I thought I had moved past the affair, a stray thought or memory would creep in, and I would find myself spiraling into doubt. It was during one of these moments that I realized I had to communicate my feelings rather than bottle them up. One night, while lying in bed, I turned to Emily, my heart racing as I spoke. I still struggle with trust sometimes. I know we're making progress, but I occasionally feel that fear creeping back in. Emily turned to face me, her expression serene. That's okay, Jake. Healing isn't linear. It's normal to have fears. Just know that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. Her reassurance helped to ground me, and I began to learn how to navigate those moments with more grace. I recognized that our journey was ongoing and the path to healing would have its ups and downs. As spring approached, we found ourselves celebrating milestones, both personal and professional. I secured additional funding for my startup, and we took a weekend trip to celebrate our achievements. During that trip, we laughed, reminisced, and shared dreams for the future. In those moments, I felt a palpable shift in our relationship. There was a sense of hope that hadn't been there before. One evening, as we stood on the balcony of our hotel overlooking a beautiful sunset, I felt compelled to express my gratitude. Emily, I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. You've worked so hard to make things right, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. I'm proud of us. She turned to me, her eyes glistening. I'm proud of us too, Jake. This journey hasn't been easy, but I believe we're stronger for it. I love you, and I'm committed to continuing to grow together. It was in that moment that I realized I was falling in love with her all over again. The connection we had built was fortified by our struggles, and while the scars of the past would always remain, they served as a reminder of our resilience. As we moved forward, I found myself sharing my fears less and celebrating our victories more. The memories of betrayal faded, replaced by laughter, intimacy, and shared dreams. We were no longer defined by the affair. We were two people committed to building a future together. I learned that love isn't just about the good times, it's about how you navigate the storms together. We were rewriting our story, one filled with hope, understanding, and a renewed commitment to each other. The journey was far from over, but as we stood together, hand in hand, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. Together, we would face the world, stronger than before.